Do you recall what Clemenceau once said about war? He said war was too important to be left to the generals. But today, war is too important to be left to politicians. They have neither the time, the training, nor the inclination for strategic thought.
The Mad General Jack Ripper paradoxically utters the mantra of the early nuclear age.
Actually does reflect, I mean, as a lot of Dr. Strangelove reflects, what's happened to our nuclear policy. The military did take over.
And so it was that President Harry Truman, presented with the fateful choice to proceed with nuclear innovation or seek to control it, scarcely hesitated before giving the hydrogen bomb, the go-ahead that sent the world careening into a potentially apocalyptic arms race. The idea that scientific advancement could or should be controlled seemed at best naive, at worst suicidal.
The hydrogen bomb decision cut off the possibility of a negotiated treaty to halt the arms race with the Soviet Union.
For the next 30 years, the United States pursued virtually every area of nuclear innovation and research proposed by the military, until 1978. Yet another weapon, the neutron bomb, seemed headed towards its usual rubber stamp. Fate and a courageous journalist intervened, and for the first time in the nuclear age, America opted to stop. Since then, the U.S. has not developed a single new nuclear weapon. The stark contrast between these two seminal decisions offers a tantalizing possibility that we might be able to control those innovations that appear too dangerous to pursue. Einstein famously said, "Ethical progress offers the only cure for scientific progress." Perhaps a study of the hydrogen and neutron bomb decisions can yield another. In 1949, the Soviet Union detonated an atomic bomb. The U.S. illusion of an indefinite atomic monopoly and invulnerability was shattered.
And it was a time when anti-communism was reaching a point of hysteria.
I think it was a panic.
In this atmosphere, all things nuclear, technical, and policy matters were strictly secret. Now, the internal debate on the U.S. response took place under that secrecy. The scientists in this debate were the legendary heroes of the Manhattan Project.
Somebody called them the new priesthood, and they were.
They made up Truman's General Advisory Committee. They voted unanimously against the military's preferred option, developing the hydrogen bomb.
Didn't have a stomach for it. Basically, they would say that this is a weapon of genocide.
They said we have quite enough atomic bombs to provide ourselves with a deterrent, even if the Soviets got a hydrogen bomb ahead of us. But what we should do is use this Soviet advance to make a proposal to them that nobody builds a hydrogen bomb.
The scientists' arguments were not heard by the public, however, and
the Army and the Air Force, which were actually the two that really had the power.
A politically traumatized and vulnerable Truman held a fateful meeting with GAC and military advisors. 7 minutes later, the meeting was over.
He asked the question if it's possible, can the Russians build it? And the answer was yes, of course. He said, then we're building it.
No public or even congressional discussion was held. The simple logic of hysteria had prevailed. Now began a nightmarish nuclear escalation. The Soviets ultimately produced a 100 megaton bomb. The U.S. spent over $4.4 trillion on its arsenal, and in 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis brought the world to the brink of annihilation, which, in the strange Levian logic of the nuclear age, resulted in a further escalation of arms development. By 1966, the U.S. had over 32,000 warheads. In 1977, Washington Post reporter Walter Pincus discovered a momentous document.
In one reference, they had forgotten to classify what were neutron weapons, enhanced radiation weapons.
This resulted in his series of articles exposing plans for a new nuclear weapon, a neutron bomb. The military sway on nuclear innovation was such that President Jimmy Carter knew nothing of it.
In the first place, I did not know it was in the bill. The enhanced radiation, a neutron bomb.
The story gained traction when the networks picked it up.
There's been talk of a new kind of nuclear weapon, a kind that kills without destroying property.
The neutron bomb kills people the same way monkeys are killed in this armed forces laboratory, by huge doses of radiation. You will see a light flash. It will be the reactor dosing A438. He died more than a day later. The neutron bomb is supposed to kill humans within minutes or even seconds. The fission bombs we now have would wipe out the troops and much of the towns of our allies. But the neutron warhead is advertised to do the same job, allow Allied troops closer to the target, and with 1/10 of the destruction and fallout.
And then people started writing about it. Then it became an issue in Congress. Then it became an issue abroad.
The public debate took a significant turn when Pincus, along with scientific advisors to Senator Hatfield, revealed that the clean bomb image was mere propaganda. The bomb was actually 40% blast. In addition, the notion of a usable nuclear weapon was debated heatedly in the U.S. and in Europe.
It tends to further a fallacious argument that we can limit nuclear warfare.
It made Dr. Strangelove, relevant again.
Ultimately,
President Carter's decision on the neutron bomb is to defer its production.
this was truly a turning point. The freight train of nuclear innovation was no longer seen as unstoppable.
And so it was in that sense a precursor to the later movement in the 80s when the public rose up and rejected the intermediate range nuclear missiles.
We have not essentially created any new weapons since.
In 2005, for example, proposed bunker-busting nukes were not built. Whereas the hydrogen bomb decision was made entirely in secret, the neutron bomb was an open, if accidental, debate. The press, excluded in 1950, informed and clarified in the 1970s. As for science advisors,
The government can't ignore science advice that it appears in their morning newspaper.
Cold War logic, when unrefuted earlier, ridiculed later. Allies were ignored by Truman, consulted by Carter. The 1970s also brought a nuclear maturity and a loss of military sway.
The American public had experience with recognizing that the military was not always making, a sensible decision.
Progress isn't so much necessary for society. The problem is, how do you stop it?
Much of the terror of the nuclear arms race lay in the sense of inevitability that it brought. Harry Truman saw no way not to build the hydrogen bomb. It was progress, and progress can't be stopped.
Nothing in history is inevitable. Nothing.
Truman operated in the closed world of the military, and so it went with escalation proceeding unabated. The neutron bomb debate proved that it did not have to be this way. Open debate can be messy, but far more complete. We saw in the neutron episode that there is no simple answer to avoiding disastrous roads of innovation, but there are resources to be tapped. The press can serve as a watchdog and informant. Scientists can clarify, and the open tradition of science can have an extra-governmental path for communication that can surmount closed societies.
Still is a community of scientists. We can do much better talking to Muslim scientists than the CIA can do talking to the spies.
International organizations can play an important role.
The United Nations is absolutely critical.
NGOs now really do play a major role in shaping the public debate.
Ultimately, for the decision on attempting innovation to be forward-thinking, these debates show that a climate that allows for courageous leadership is required.
Public debate is good, but a lot of times public debate gets carried away on ideas that are irrelevant.
A polarized political climate provides no more room for leadership than Truman had in his closed process. Indeed, if Truman had an open debate in the hysterically polarized climate of the time, it seems doubtful that the words of the GAC would have prevailed, though at least they would have had a chance. In order for the tools of openness to operate, for decisions to be not political but moral and ethical, citizen activism and involvement is required.
American politics, democratic politics, require people to stay active.
Education, good sense, cooperation, international organizations, exposure of people to the fact that their humanity is as important as their security is something that sensible leadership has to promote. And otherwise we're kind of doomed to, somebody pushing the wrong button.
The institutions of openness were used properly by involved citizens in the neutron bomb debate. This allowed the old myth of nuclear inevitability to give way to a new wisdom.
I state clearly and with conviction America's commitment to seek the peace and security of a world without nuclear weapons.